Ever wonder how your grandparents made food last so long without fancy gadgets? Back when wasting anything was unthinkable, they had ingenious tricks for everything. Today we're exploring 25 oddly useful food hacks that kept families fed and thriving through tough times. Let's start with stale bread as croutons. Instead of throwing away that day-old loaf, your grandparents would cut it into cubes and toast them with butter, salt, and herbs. This wasn't just about avoiding waste. It was about creating something delicious from what others might discard. During the Depression era, when a loaf of bread cost about 9 cents, equivalent to about $1.50 today, every slice mattered. They'd save bread that was getting hard, cube it up, and toss it in a hot skillet with whatever fat they had on hand, often bacon grease or butter. The result? Golden, crispy croutons that added texture to soups and salads. Some families would even season them with garlic powder or dried herbs from their garden. This practice was so common that many restaurants in the 1940s and 50s started making their own croutons this way, turning potential waste into a menu staple. Today we spend $3 or $4 on a bag of croutons at the store, but your grandparents knew the secret was already sitting in their bread box: potato as a fridge deodorizer. Long before baking soda boxes became the go-to fridge freshener, your grandparents discovered that a simple raw potato could work wonders. They'd cut a potato in half and place it cut side up in the back of the refrigerator or pantry. The potato's starch naturally absorbed odors from fish, onions, and other pungent foods. This trick was especially popular in the 1930s through the 1950s, when refrigerators were smaller and foods were often stored together in tight spaces. The science behind it is simple. Potatoes are porous and act like natural sponges for airborne molecules. Families would replace the potato every week or two, often using the old one in their compost or garden. Some households even placed potatoes in their root cellars to keep stored vegetables fresher longer. The best part? When the potato was done with its deodorizing duty, it could still be planted if it had started sprouting, giving you a whole new crop. That's right, one potato could freshen your fridge and then grow into pounds more potatoes. Talk about getting your money's worth from a 5-cent vegetable. Boil potato peels for stock. Your grandparents never threw away potato peels. They saw liquid gold where others saw garbage. After peeling potatoes for dinner, they'd collect the peels in a pot with water, add some onion scraps, carrot tops, and whatever herbs they had, then simmer it all for 30-45 minutes. This created a rich, flavorful vegetable stock that cost absolutely nothing extra. During World War II, when meat was rationed and every penny counted, this potato peel stock became the base for countless soups and stews. The peels actually contain more nutrients than the potato itself, packed with vitamin C, potassium, and fiber. Families would strain out the solids and use the golden liquid for cooking rice, making gravy, or as the foundation for vegetable soup. Some clever cooks would even reduce it down further to concentrate the flavor. In rural areas, this practice was so common that neighbors would share their peel water recipes, each family adding their own twist with different herbs or vegetable scraps. Today's trendy zero-waste cooking movement is really just rediscovering what your grandparents knew all along. Save bacon grease. In your grandparents' kitchen, that ceramic jar by the stove wasn't decorative. It was the bacon grease container, and it was pure culinary gold. Every time they cooked bacon, they'd carefully pour the hot grease through a strainer into that jar, where it would solidify into white fat. This wasn't just frugality, it was flavor insurance. A tablespoon of bacon grease could transform plain green beans into a southern delicacy, or turn cornbread from good to unforgettable. During the 1940s and 50s, bacon grease was often the primary cooking fat in many households, especially in the South and Midwest. It was used for frying eggs, sautéing vegetables, making pie crusts flakier, and even popping popcorn. The smoky, salty flavor it imparted was considered essential to many regional dishes. Families would guard their grease jar carefully, keeping it covered and away from light to prevent it from going rancid. Some households had grease jars that had been seasoned over years of use, creating complex flavors that couldn't be replicated. At a time when a pound of bacon cost about 50 cents but could flavor dozens of meals through its grease, this practice made perfect economic sense. Tomato stems to ripen green tomatoes. When frost threatened and tomatoes were still green on the vine, your grandparents had a trick that seems almost magical today. They'd pick the green tomatoes along with a good length of stem and leaves, then hang them upside down in a cool, dark place like a basement or pantry. The stems would continue to feed the fruit, allowing it to ripen naturally over several weeks. But here's the really clever part. They'd also place individual green tomatoes in a paper bag or drawer with a ripe tomato or two. The ripe ones released ethylene gas, which triggered the green ones to ripen faster. This wasn't just garden folklore, it was agricultural science in action. Families could enjoy fresh tomatoes well into November and December using this method. Some would wrap each green tomato in newspaper and store them in a cool spot, checking weekly and moving the ripe ones to the kitchen. The practice was so effective that during the 1930s and 40s, many families had fresh tomatoes for Thanksgiving dinner, grown in their own gardens months earlier. Hard to believe, right? Today we import tomatoes from thousands of miles away, but your grandparents figured out how to make summer last into winter. Use coffee grounds as fertilizer. That morning coffee ritual in your grandparents' house didn't end when the last cup was poured. Those used coffee grounds went straight to the garden, where they worked magic on everything from roses to tomatoes. Coffee grounds are slightly acidic and rich in nitrogen, making them perfect for acid-loving plants. Your grandparents would sprinkle them around the base of plants or work them into the soil before planting. During the 1940s and 50s, when a pound of coffee cost about 40 cents, every bit was precious, including the grounds. They discovered that roses especially loved coffee grounds, producing bigger, more vibrant blooms. Tomato plants grew stronger and produced more fruit. Some gardeners would even create coffee compost by mixing grounds with other kitchen scraps. The grounds also helped improve soil structure, making heavy clay soil, lighter and sandy soil better at retaining water. As an added bonus, the caffeine residue helped deter pests like slugs and snails. Neighborhood coffee shops and diners would often give away their used grounds to local gardeners, creating an early recycling network. Today's expensive organic fertilizers often contain the same nutrients your grandparents got for free from their morning brew. Citrus peels for natural cleaner. Before chemical cleaners lined store shelves, your grandparents turned to citrus peels for their cleaning power. Orange and lemon peels contain natural oils that cut through grease and leave surfaces sparkling. They'd rub the inside of a lemon peel on cutting boards to remove odors and stains or use orange peels to polish wood furniture to a beautiful shine. The citrus oils also acted as a natural disinfectant, making them perfect for kitchen use. During the 1930s through the 50s, when oranges were a special treat costing about 5 cents each, every part was used. Families would dry citrus peels and grind them into a powder for scouring, or steep them in vinegar to create an all-purpose cleaner. The fresh scent was an added bonus in homes without air fresheners. Some households would simmer citrus peels with cinnamon sticks to naturally fragrance their homes, especially during holidays. The oils from the peels could remove sticky residue, clean mirrors without streaking, and even remove water spots from faucets. This practice was so effective that many early commercial cleaners actually used citrus oils as their main ingredient. Think about that. Your grandparents' homemade cleaner was the inspiration for products we pay premium prices for today. Make butter from heavy cream. Making butter wasn't just for farms. Many suburban and city families in the 1940s and 50s made their own butter right in their kitchen. All it took was heavy cream, a jar with a tight lid, and some elbow grease. Kids would take turns shaking the jar while listening to the radio, and within 15-20 minutes, the cream would separate into butter and buttermilk. The process was like magic to watch. The cream would get thicker and thicker, then suddenly break into golden butter floating in thin, tangy buttermilk. A pint of cream costing about 25 cents could yield nearly half a pound of butter plus a cup of buttermilk for baking. Families would salt the butter to their taste and press it into molds or crocks. The leftover buttermilk was prized for making the fluffiest pancakes and biscuits. Some households had special butter churns, but the jar method worked just as well and turned butter making into a fun family activity. During wartime rationing, when butter was scarce, this skill became essential. The fresh taste was incomparable to store-bought, and many families continued making their own butter even after rationing ended, simply because it tasted so much better. Use a wooden spoon to prevent boil-over. This simple trick saved countless messes in your grandparents' kitchen. By laying a wooden spoon across the top of a pot, they could prevent milk, pasta water, or soup from boiling over. The science is beautifully simple. The wooden spoon breaks the surface tension of the bubbles and provides a cooler surface that causes them to pop before they can overflow. This was especially valuable when cooking on wood-burning or early gas stoves where temperature control was less precise. During the 1940s and 50s, when every drop of milk mattered and cleaning supplies were basic, preventing spills was crucial. The wooden spoon trick became so trusted that many cooks had a designated pot spoon that lived by the stove. It worked for everything from boiling potatoes to making jam. The spoon needed to be wooden because metal would conduct heat and become too hot to handle, while plastic wasn't widely available yet. Some families passed down special, long-handled wooden spoons specifically for this purpose. That's right, a simple wooden spoon could save your dinner and your stovetop. No fancy equipment needed. Banana peels to polish shoes. Before shoe polish became cheap and widely available, your grandparents discovered that banana peels worked wonders on leather shoes. The natural oils and potassium in the peel would clean and condition leather, leaving shoes with a subtle shine. After eating a banana, they'd use the inside of the peel to rub all over their shoes, then buff with a soft cloth. This wasn't just a Depression-era hack, it was standard practice in many households through the 1950s. The banana peel method was gentler than commercial polishes and didn't require different colors for different shoes. It worked on leather bags, belts, and even furniture. During World War II, when shoe polish was sometimes hard to find, this trick kept families looking presentable. The peels also worked on silverware, removing tarnish and leaving a protective coating. At a time when bananas cost about 10 cents per pound and a tin of shoe polish cost 15 cents, using the peel you were going to throw away anyway made perfect sense. Some people even dried banana peels and ground them into a powder to use as a metal polish. Imagine that, the same peel that would end up in the trash could keep your Sunday shoes looking sharp. Freezing overripe fruit. When bananas turned brown or berries got too soft, your grandparents didn't see waste. They saw opportunity. Overripe fruit was perfect for freezing and using later in baking, smoothies, or preserves. They'd peel bananas and wrap them in wax paper before freezing, creating the perfect ingredient for banana bread months later. Berries were spread on a tray to freeze individually before being stored in containers, preventing them from clumping together. This practice really took off in the 1950s as home freezers became more common. A family could buy fruit in season when it was cheapest, strawberries for 15 cents a quart in June, and enjoy them all winter. Overripe fruit was actually better for many recipes because the natural sugars had concentrated, making baked goods sweeter and more flavorful. Some families had fruit days where they'd process pounds of nearly overripe fruit from local farms, creating a freezer full of ingredients. The frozen fruit also made excellent baby food when mashed, and frozen grapes became a popular summer treat for kids. This simple preservation method meant that no fruit ever went to waste, and families could enjoy summer flavors year-round. Rubbing garlic to keep pests away. Long before chemical pest sprays, your grandparents used garlic as their secret weapon against household pests. They'd cut a clove of garlic in half and rub it around window frames, door frames, and any cracks where ants or spiders might enter. The strong sulfur compounds in garlic acted as a natural deterrent that most insects couldn't stand. This method was especially popular in rural areas where pest problems were common, but commercial pesticides were expensive or unavailable. During the 1940s and 50s, when a pound of garlic cost about 20 cents, this was an incredibly economical solution. Some families would make a garlic spray by steeping crushed cloves in water and using it around the garden to deter aphids and other plant pests. The trick also worked for larger pests. Garlic planted around the garden helped keep rabbits and deer away from vegetables. In the kitchen, garlic cloves placed in pantries helped deter moths and weevils from getting into flour and grains. The smell would fade for humans after a day or two, but insects could still detect it and stayed away. Let that sink in. A few cents worth of garlic could protect an entire season's worth of stored food. Use a cheesecloth to strain broth. In your grandparents' kitchen, cheesecloth was as essential as a good knife. This loosely woven cotton fabric was the secret to crystal clear broths and perfectly smooth sauces. After simmering bones and vegetables for hours to make stock, they'd line a strainer with cheesecloth and pour the liquid through, catching even the tiniest particles. The result was a professional quality broth that formed the base for soups, gravies, and sauces. Cheesecloth cost just pennies per yard in the 1940s and 50s, and one piece could be washed and reused dozens of times. Beyond straining, it was used for making cottage cheese, hence the name, wrapping herbs for bouquet garni, and even straining homemade nut milks. Some families used it to wrap fruitcakes soaked in brandy or to make spice bags for mulled cider. The fine weave could strain out seeds from berry preserves or clarify butter by removing milk solids. Farm families often had several grades of cheesecloth for different purposes. This simple fabric tool was so versatile that many households couldn't imagine cooking without it. Today's expensive nut milk bags and specialty strainers are really just fancy versions of what your grandparents accomplished with a square of cheesecloth. Freeze extra coffee for ice cubes. Your grandparents hated waste so much that even leftover coffee got a second life. Instead of pouring that half pot down the drain, they'd let it cool and pour it into ice cube trays. These coffee ice cubes were perfect for icing their afternoon coffee without diluting it, or for adding coffee flavor to desserts and milkshakes. This trick became especially popular in the 1950s as iced coffee gained popularity and home freezers became standard. At 40 cents per pound for coffee, every cup mattered. Some creative cooks used coffee ice cubes in chocolate cakes and brownies for deeper flavor, or melted them to make coffee-flavored frosting. The cubes could also cool down too hot coffee quickly without watering it down. During summer months, kids would even eat them as coffee popsicles with a little sugar and milk added before freezing. Restaurants and diners picked up this trick too, ensuring their iced coffee stayed strong all day. The practice was so logical that many wondered why they hadn't thought of it sooner. Speaking of practical solutions, this next one turned empty egg cartons into produce savers. Use an egg carton to store fruit. Those cardboard egg cartons were too useful to throw away in your grandparents' house. The individual cups were perfect for storing delicate fruits like peaches, plums, or tomatoes, without them touching and bruising each other. This was especially important when families bought fruit by the bushel during harvest season. Each piece of fruit got its own protective compartment, extending freshness by days or even weeks. During the 1940s and 50s, when a dozen eggs cost about 50 cents, the carton was considered part of the value. Families would stack these fruit-filled cartons in cool pantries or basements, creating organized storage systems. The cartons also worked great for ripening fruit evenly. The air circulation around each piece prevented soft spots. Some households used them for storing holiday ornaments, sorting buttons or small hardware, or even starting seedlings for the garden. The egg carton storage method was so effective that many fruit stands adopted it for displaying their wares. It's amazing how a simple cardboard container designed for one purpose could solve so many storage problems. Think about that next time you're about to toss an egg carton in the recycling. Use vinegar to crisp lettuce. When lettuce started to wilt, your grandparents didn't throw it away. They brought it back to life with vinegar water. A tablespoon of white vinegar in a bowl of ice water could transform limp lettuce into crisp, fresh-tasting greens in just 30 minutes. The mild acid in the vinegar helped restore the cellular structure of the leaves, while the cold water provided hydration. This trick was essential during the Depression and war years, when every leaf of lettuce counted. At 10 cents a head in the 1940s, making lettuce last was important for stretching the food budget. The method worked for all leafy greens, spinach, cabbage, even herbs like parsley and cilantro. Some families kept a designated crisping bowl in the refrigerator with vinegar water ready to go. The vinegar didn't affect the taste if the lettuce was thoroughly drained, but some people grew to prefer the slight tang it added. This technique was so reliable that many restaurants used it to refresh their salad greens before service. The same principle worked for reviving celery and carrots too. Your grandparents understood that with the right knowledge, very little food needed to go to waste. DIY buttermilk with vinegar. Buttermilk was essential for fluffy pancakes and tender biscuits, but it wasn't always available at the store. Your grandparents solved this problem with a simple substitution, adding a tablespoon of vinegar or lemon juice to regular milk and letting it sit for 5 minutes. The acid would curdle the milk slightly, creating the same tangy flavor and chemical reaction needed for baking. This hack was passed down through generations and saved countless baking projects. During the 1940s and 50s, when buttermilk was primarily a byproduct of butter making and not always commercially available, this trick was essential knowledge. The substitution worked so well that many bakers actually preferred it for consistency. A cup of milk costing 10 cents could be transformed into buttermilk in minutes, rather than making a special trip to find the real thing. The same method worked with cream for making sour cream or with different acids like cream of tartar. Recipe books from the era often included this substitution as a standard note. Some families discovered that the DIY version actually made lighter pancakes than store-bought buttermilk. That's right, the fake version sometimes beat the real thing. Make pancake mix from scratch and store it. While modern cooks reach for boxed mix, your grandparents made their own in bulk and stored it in canisters. They'd combine flour, baking powder, salt, and powdered milk in large batches, creating a custom mix that was always ready for Sunday breakfast. This wasn't just convenient, it was economical and resulted in better pancakes than any store-bought mix. During the 1940s and 50s, when Bisquick cost 35 cents for a small box, making your own mix from 10 cents worth of ingredients made sense. Families would make 10-pound batches, storing them in tin canisters or glass jars. Each household had their own special additions. Some added vanilla powder, others included a touch of sugar or even dried buttermilk powder. The homemade mix stayed fresh for months and could be customized for different uses, thicker for pancakes, thinner for crepes, or with added sugar for dessert versions. Kids learned to cook by measuring out the mix and adding wet ingredients. Many families still have their grandmother's pancake mix recipe written on an index card, stained with decades of Saturday morning use. The pride in serving from scratch pancakes that were actually quite convenient shows how clever our grandparents really were. Turn leftover rice into fritters. Cold leftover rice was transformed into a delicacy in your grandparents' kitchen. They'd mix it with beaten eggs, a little flour, and whatever seasonings they had, maybe some chopped onion, herbs, or even the leftover vegetables. These rice fritters were fried until golden and crispy, creating a completely different meal from last night's side dish. This practice was especially common in households that cooked large batches of rice to save fuel. During the 1940s and 50s, when rice was an economical staple at about 15 cents per pound, wasting even a spoonful was unthinkable. Sweet versions included sugar and cinnamon, sometimes with raisins or apple pieces mixed in. Savory fritters might contain cheese, bacon bits, or chopped ham. The fritters could be served for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and even cold ones made good snacks. Some families had special fritter nights, where all the week's leftover grains, rice, oatmeal, even mashed potatoes, were transformed into crispy patties. The technique was so popular that many cultures have their own version, from Italian arancini to Japanese onigiri. But that wasn't all they could do with simple ingredients. Use salt to remove skin from tomatoes. Peeling tomatoes for canning or cooking was made simple with a sprinkle of salt. Your grandparents would score an X on the bottom of each tomato, sprinkle it with coarse salt, then drop it in boiling water for 30 seconds. The salt helped the skin separate more easily, and when transferred to ice water, the skins would practically slide off. This method was crucial during canning season, when families processed bushels of tomatoes. In the 1940s and 50s, home canning was essential for year-round food security, and tomatoes were the backbone of the pantry. A family might can 50-100 quarts of tomatoes in various forms: whole, sauce, paste, and juice. The salt trick saved hours of peeling time and resulted in cleaner, more attractive canned goods. The technique worked because salt helped break down the cellular structure where the skin attached to the flesh. Some canners swore that salted tomatoes also held their shape better during processing. The method was so efficient that canning clubs and county extension services taught it as the standard technique. Even today, professional chefs use this same method your grandparents perfected in their home kitchens. DIY ice cream with salt and ice. Before electric ice cream makers, your grandparents made ice cream with nothing more than ice, salt, and muscle power. They'd put the cream mixture in a small container, nest it inside a larger one filled with ice and rock salt, then roll, shake, or crank it until frozen. The salt lowered the freezing point of the ice, creating temperatures cold enough to freeze the cream. This wasn't just a special occasion treat. Many families made ice cream weekly during summer months. In the 1940s and 50s, when store-bought ice cream was a luxury at 25 cents per pint, homemade was both economical and superior in taste. The whole family would take turns cranking the freezer, with kids eagerly awaiting their turn to lick the dasher. Rock salt was cheap and reusable. After making ice cream, the salty water could be used to kill weeds or de-ice walkways in winter. Families experimented with flavors using garden fruits, coffee, chocolate, or even unusual additions like corn or sweet potato. The process took about 30-45 minutes of constant motion, turning ice cream making into a social event. Imagine that. What we now buy for $5 a pint required just cream, sugar, and family teamwork. Preserve citrus with salt. When lemons or limes were abundant and cheap, your grandparents preserved them in salt for year-round use. They'd cut slits in whole lemons, stuff them with coarse salt, pack them tightly in jars, and cover with lemon juice. After a month of curing, these preserved lemons added incredible flavor to stews, roasted meats, and salads. This North African technique was adopted by many American households, especially in citrus-growing regions. During the 1940s and 50s, when fresh lemons cost 5 cents each but were seasonal, preserving them made economic sense. The salt-cured lemons developed a unique mellow flavor that fresh lemons couldn't match. The preservation process also worked with limes, oranges, and even kumquats. Families would make several jars during citrus season, ensuring they had this flavor enhancer all year. The salty brine was used too. A spoonful added complexity to salad dressings and marinades. Some households discovered that preserved lemons helped with digestion when a small piece was eaten after heavy meals. The jars of golden preserved lemons became family treasures, often given as gifts to new brides setting up their kitchens. This ancient preservation method proved that our grandparents were more globally connected than we might think. Use leftover bacon fat for cooking. We mentioned saving bacon grease earlier, but your grandparents' uses for it deserve more detail. That ceramic crock of bacon fat was like a flavor savings account, withdrawn from daily for countless dishes. They'd use it for frying potatoes until crispy, making the flakiest pie crusts, popping the most flavorful popcorn, and even spreading it on bread during lean times. The rendered fat would keep for months when stored properly, providing a free cooking medium with built-in seasoning. During the Depression and World War II, when butter was rationed and cooking oils were expensive, bacon fat was culinary gold. A pound of bacon at 50 cents would yield enough fat for weeks of cooking. Southern cooks made legendary cornbread with bacon fat, while Midwestern families used it for the best fried chicken. The fat was carefully strained after each use to remove particles, keeping it clean and usable. Some households had different jars for different types of fat: bacon, chicken, beef, each lending its own flavor to dishes. The practice was so ingrained that many people couldn't imagine cooking vegetables any other way. Even today, many of the South's most beloved dishes rely on the flavor that only bacon fat can provide. Recycle nutshells as fire starter. Those walnut and pecan shells didn't go in the trash at your grandparents' house. They went into the kindling box. Nutshells, especially from oily nuts, made excellent fire starters for wood stoves and fireplaces. They caught fire easily, burned hot, and lasted long enough to ignite larger pieces of wood. During fall and winter, when nuts were cracked for baking and snacking, families would save every shell. This wasn't just rural wisdom. Even city dwellers with fireplaces used this trick. In the 1940s and 50s, when a pound of walnuts cost about 45 cents, using every part made sense. The shells were thoroughly dried and stored in baskets or boxes near the fireplace. Some families would dip them in melted wax to make even better fire starters. Pecan shells were especially prized because their oil content made them burn longer. The ash from burned nut shells was saved too. It made excellent fertilizer for the garden, being rich in potassium. During the holidays, when nut consumption peaked, families would prepare gift baskets of shell fire starters for neighbors. Hard to believe, right? What we throw away without thinking, they turned into useful household supplies. Thanks for joining us on this trip down memory lane. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like and share it with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe.